The Statue of Liberty by Kevin Blake. Liberty's birthday. On a wet October day in 1886, more than 1 million people jammed the streets of New York City. They had gathered to cheer on a parade presided over by President Grover Cleveland. Throughout the busy city, bands played patriotic songs and people eagerly waved American and French flags. Even the rain couldn't stop the excitement. As the parade reached the southern tip of the city, onlookers could see a giant metal object rising out of New York Harbor. It stood more than 300 feet tall and was topped with a glowing torch. A huge French flag covered the upper part of it. Suddenly, the flag was pulled away, revealing the Statue of Liberty to the crowd. People wept with joy and shouted in delight. They had never seen anything so beautiful. The statue's official name was Liberty Enlightening the World, but most people called it the Statue of Liberty. Dreaming big. Where had the majestic statue come from, and who had built it? Edouard de Louboulet, a French law professor, first dreamt up the idea to build the monument. Edouard admired American democracy because people were free to choose their leaders. In France, where Edouard lived, the people didn't have a choice. So Edouard had an idea. France should build a huge monument in the United States that celebrated democracy and liberty. Maybe it would inspire the French people to create their own democracy. During the Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, America fought for independence from Great Britain. France was America's biggest ally and helped the Americans win the war. Edward told his friend, a young French sculptor named Auguste Bartholdi, about the idea. Auguste agreed to design and build a giant statue. The young sculptor did not realize, however, just how much work was to come. The design. Auguste quickly went to work on his design. It wasn't easy, however. How could a statue represent the idea of liberty? After a lot of thought, Auguste decided to model the statue after Libertas, the Roman goddess of freedom. Like Libertas, the new statue would look like a woman and wear a flowing gown called a stola. Auguste wanted the statue to represent liberty in other ways too, so he designed a glowing torch, a symbol of enlightenment and freedom, for the statue to hold. His plan also included broken chains, symbolizing the end of oppression, at the statue's feet. In her left hand, Auguste would place a tablet with the date, July 4, 1776, America's Independence Day, written on it. Some people think Auguste modeled the statue's face after his mother, Charlotte. Finding the perfect spot. After the design was complete, Auguste needed to find a place to put the statue. In 1871, he sailed from France to America to scout locations. When his ship entered New York Harbor, Auguste's eyes landed on the perfect spot. It was a small, rocky piece of land near Manhattan called Bedloe's Island. What better place to put Lady Liberty, Auguste thought, than at the gateway to America? However, Auguste needed money and support from the American people to build the statue and use Bedloe's Island. So he toured the country and met with Americans to ask for help. Auguste even spoke with President Ulysses S. Grant. The president liked Auguste's idea, but wouldn't give him any money or make any promises just yet. Auguste would have to keep working to build support for the huge statue. New York Harbor was known as the gateway to America because most ships traveling from Europe had to sail through it. The World's Fair. Auguste came up with a brilliant plan to create excitement and raise money for the statue. A huge festival called the U.S. Centennial Exposition, or World's Fair, was being held in Philadelphia in 1876. He knew there wasn't enough time to build the entire statue to display at the fair, but he could construct a small part of it. This would be his chance to show Americans just how amazing the statue would be. For the fair, Auguste decided to make one of the statue's hands and the torch. Back in France, his team of craftsmen built a plaster model and covered it with a wood frame. Then they heated sheets of copper, a strong, lightweight metal, until it softened. The workers hammered the soft copper sheets over the wooden frame. As the copper cooled, it hardened. When completed, the hand and torch stood as tall as a 3-story building and was big enough to fit a staircase inside. In the 1800s, most statues were built out of marble or another kind of stone. Stone, however, would be too heavy and expensive for Auguste's statue. Building excitement. The giant copper hand and torch became a main attraction at the World's Fair. For 50 cents, visitors climbed the stairs inside the hand to reach the torch. Near the display, Auguste placed a drawing of what the completed statue would look like. Visitors marveled at the sight of the beautiful, colossal figure. Roughly 9 million people came to the World's Fair in 1876. At that time, there are only about 50 million people living in the United States. Soon, excitement for the statue spread throughout America. In 1877, Congress voted to allow Auguste to use Bedloe's Island. In addition, France and the United States agreed to split the cost of building the monument. The French would pay for the statue, while the Americans would cover the cost of constructing a huge pedestal for it to stand on. Auguste was thrilled. He could now finish his work. Supporting the statue. Still, there was something important that Auguste had to figure out. How could he build a giant statue that wouldn't topple over? Copper was a great material for the exterior, but it wasn't strong enough to support the enormous figure. Auguste returned to France and asked a young French engineer named Gustave Eiffel for help. Gustave suggested putting sturdy iron beams inside the statue. The hard metal would be strong enough to hold up the statue the same way bones hold up a body. Auguste liked the idea. Using 250,000 pounds of iron, French workers built the skeleton. The statue was quickly taking shape. Soon after helping Auguste, Gustave Eiffel designed the Eiffel Tower, a huge iron structure in Paris, France. A huge pedestal. Back in America, work on the statue's pedestal was moving slowly. Richard Morris Hunt, the architect chosen to design it, faced some big challenges. For one thing, the pedestal had to be large and strong enough to support the weight of 450,000-pound statue. To solve this problem, Richard designed an 89-foot-tall concrete pedestal with 20-foot thick walls covered with a type of stone called granite. To begin building the foundation for the pedestal, workers dug a 15-foot deep hole on Bedloe's Island. Then they pumped it full of concrete. However, the money set aside for the project by the American Committee for the Statue of Liberty soon ran out. The committee would need another $100,000 to finish the job. They asked Congress for help, but Congress said no. Without a pedestal, there could be no statue. Architect Richard Morris Hunt was famous for designing houses for wealthy people in the 1800s. Pulitzer to the rescue. As time passed, it looked as though the pedestal might never get built. That's when a man named Joseph Pulitzer came to the rescue. Joseph was an immigrant from Hungary who owned a famous newspaper called The World. He loved what the statue stood for and decided to ask the readers of his newspaper for help. Joseph printed several articles in which he encouraged ordinary people to donate any amount of money they could afford to give. His persuasive writing did the trick. More than 125,000 people, including children, gave small donations as little as 1 penny. Soon, there was enough money to finish the pedestal. Joseph Pulitzer promised that anyone who contributed money for the pedestal would get his or her name printed in the paper, and he carried out his promise. Putting it all together. While the Americans worked on the pedestal, Auguste had to figure out a way to transport the finished statue to New York. Because of its size, it couldn't be sent in one piece. Instead, French workers had to disassemble the statue into hundreds of smaller pieces. They carefully packed the pieces into crates and then loaded them onto a ship called the Isiri. In 1885, the Isiri sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to New York. After unpacking the crates, workers erected the iron skeleton on top of the pedestal. Then, while swinging on ropes attached to the towering structure, they fastened the copper pieces to the skeleton using thousands of rivets. When they were done, the Statue of Liberty was the tallest man-made structure in the United States. "The dream of my life is accomplished," declared Auguste. The statue was so big that it took 7 trains to haul the crates from Auguste's workshop in Paris to Isiri. The immigrant statue. In October 1886, the Statue of Liberty was unveiled to the public during a huge celebration. As Edouard de la Boulaye and Auguste had hoped, the statue was a beautiful symbol of American freedom. It was that very freedom that encouraged millions of immigrants from all over the world to sail to New York City and start a new life in the United States. For many, the Statue of Liberty was the first thing they saw when they arrived at their new home. Emma Lazarus wrote a famous poem about the millions of immigrants who passed by Lady Liberty. The poem was inscribed on the statue's pedestal in 1903. In 1890, the U.S. government built an immigration station on Ellis Island, not far from the statue. Immigrants were required to stop at Ellis Island for questioning and a brief medical examination before they were allowed to enter the country. In the early 1900s, more than 5,000 immigrants passed by the Statue of Liberty on their way to Ellis Island each day. Lady Liberty today. Over time, water has changed the Statue of Liberty's color from the reddish brown of a copper penny to a bluish green. In 1984, 2 years before the statue's 100th birthday, Lady Liberty underwent a major restoration. Workers repaired holes in her copper skin and replaced the rusting iron framework. The torch, which had been badly damaged by seawater, was replaced with a replica. Images of the Statue of Liberty can be found on coins, stamps, license plates, and even in movies. Today, nearly 4 million people from around the world visit the statue each year. Some even climb up the 354 steps to the statue's crown. When they reach the top, visitors can peer through tiny windows. There, they are rewarded with an amazing view that goes on for miles and miles. Statue of Liberty by the numbers. If you'd like to read this page, pause the video. That's the end of the story.